The galaxy had always been a vast expanse of diverse civilizations, each with its own history, its own rules, and its own ambitions. The Galactic Council, formed eons ago to maintain order and peace, was the arbiter of all matters concerning interstellar politics, trade, and conflict. The Council's members were drawn from species far older and more advanced than humanity, their technologies and philosophies intertwined in a complex web that had held the galaxy together for millennia. Humans, by comparison, were newcomers. It wasn't so much their age that made them a curiosity, but their sheer unpredictability. For centuries, humanity had been confined to their homeworld, Earth, limited by the boundaries of their solar system. They were a species of conflict and innovation, emerging from a brutal history of war and strife to eventually venture into the cosmos. When humanity first made contact with the galactic community, many assumed their advanced spacefaring capabilities would lead them to be absorbed into the galactic fold, much like the hundreds of species before them. But there was something about humans that made them different, something the Council had underestimated. The Council had always maintained that the galaxy's peace depended on the stability of its established order. The principle was simple: each species would develop at its own pace, guided by the wisdom of the Council's members, with new civilizations granted the privilege of neutrality until they proved themselves capable of understanding the intricate balance of galactic politics. The Council had warned humanity early on. Stay neutral. Focus on your own growth. Don't meddle in the broader conflicts of the galaxy. But humans did not heed this advice. The first sign of trouble came with the discovery of an ancient alien relic on the outskirts of the Rho system, a piece of technology so advanced that it defied understanding. Humans, with their insatiable curiosity, attempted to reverse engineer the relic. It was an act of arrogance, the Council believed, but it was also a clear demonstration of the human's potential for both brilliance and folly. What followed was a series of rapid advancements in human technology. Within a few decades, humans had developed the means to create faster-than-light travel, unlock new sources of energy, and most alarmingly, create artificial intelligence capable of rivaling the minds of the Council's most intelligent species. The galactic elite watched with growing unease as human ambition began to outpace the development of their more established counterparts. The tipping point came when humanity brokered an independent peace agreement between two warring factions, an act considered anathema to the Council's long-standing policy of mediating conflicts. Humans, it seemed, had an innate capacity for negotiation, a skill honed from centuries of internal strife. Rather than simply relying on diplomacy in the traditional galactic sense, they sought to understand the motivations of all parties involved. They were not bound by the old rules. Their pragmatic, sometimes blunt approach to peace made them an asset, but also a threat to the established order. It was at this moment that the Galactic Council issued its first formal warning. You should let humans stay neutral. The statement was not an offer, it was a command. For decades, the Council had carefully curated the galaxy's balance. Wars were fought, alliances were made, but all within the confines of rules designed to prevent any one species from upsetting the status quo. Humanity's rapid rise threatened that balance. The Council feared that if humans continued to meddle in galactic politics, they would become a destabilizing force, a species too unpredictable to control. At the core of the Council's warning was a deep, unspoken fear, the fear that humanity, with its aggressive innovation and boundless ambition, might break free from the constraints of galactic order. There was no room for another power to rival the Council's authority, and humans, with their relentless drive to expand and explore, seemed to be headed in that direction. We cannot allow them to become too involved, said High Counselor Zorith, a towering figure of the Zervix species, who had sat at the Council's table for nearly 1,000 years. His voice carried the weight of centuries of political maneuvering. Humanity's unpredictability is their greatest strength, but it will also be their undoing. Their interference in the affairs of other species undermines the stability we have worked so long to maintain. A murmur rippled through the chamber as the other representatives exchanged glances. The Council had never been a body of consensus. Each species held its own interests, its own secrets. But Zoritha's words struck a chord. Humanity's interference, whether intentional or not, had begun to expose cracks in the system. The longer the humans remained outside the Council's direct influence, the more they seemed to disrupt the natural order. But there were those who disagreed. Ambassador Lyris of the Jalsath, an ancient race known for its wisdom and calm demeanor, spoke in defense of the humans. "We cannot treat them as mere children in the galactic community. They have the potential to contribute something new, something vital. We have always been a council of progress, of growth. Is it not in our nature to evolve with new species, to expand our understanding of the universe?" Lyra's voice resonated across the chamber, but it was met with silence. The council had long ago decided that stability was the highest virtue, and any threat to that stability, no matter how well-intentioned, was a danger to the galaxy at large. Back on Earth, the leaders of humanity were unaware of the full extent of the Council's fears. They had only recently learned of the Galactic Council's warning through intercepted transmissions, which painted a picture of a galaxy afraid of their species' potential. To them, it seemed like a challenge, a call to prove that humanity was not just another fleeting race, but a force to be reckoned with. And so, the question hung in the air like a looming shadow: should humanity continue to assert itself on the galactic stage, or should they heed the warning and step back? There was no simple answer, for doing so would mean abandoning everything they had worked for, everything they had fought to build in the stars. As tensions mounted and the galaxy watched with bated breath, one truth became clear: the Council's warning was not merely about humanity's neutrality. It was a warning about control. The Council feared that if humanity did not remain in the shadows, it would soon be the one pulling the strings. And that was a fate they could not allow. The future of the galaxy was now in the hands of those who had been called the new species. Humanity's choice would either preserve the old order, or dismantle it forever. The Galactic Council convened in a rare emergency session, a room where the most powerful beings in the galaxy met to discuss the most pressing issues of the stars. Its chamber, a space between dimensions, was quiet, almost unnervingly so. The ancient beings that occupied the seats, all representatives of long-established species, exchanged cautious glances. Their deliberations, always slow and meticulous, had never been this tense. The Council had been closely monitoring humanity's rise in recent decades. It wasn't the rapid technological advancements that worried them; those were expected. Species like the Axer, a silicon-based race that had once harvested energy from collapsing stars, and the Ithaca, an insectid species capable of manipulating time for short bursts, had once undergone similarly meteoric ascents. The Council was used to that. It was something else about humanity that unnerved them. Their resistance to galactic norms, their ability to refuse compromise, to fight for their independence, was unlike anything the Council had seen in centuries. The last time such a species had been so brazen, it had taken 2 galactic wars to bring them to heel. At the heart of the current crisis was the human decision to remain neutral in the ongoing conflict between the Xiphorii and the Kythrex. The Xiphorii were a technologically advanced species known for their sleek, interdimensional ships and their empire of ruthless efficiency. The Kythrex, on the other hand, were a biologically enhanced species, known for their genetically engineered warriors and their unyielding belief in the superiority of their genetic code. Both sides had engaged in decades of hostilities, with skirmishes breaking out at the fringes of explored space. The Council had made several attempts to mediate peace, but the war persisted. Then, humanity had intervened, though not in the way anyone had expected. Humans did not side with either faction. They refused to be drawn into the conflict, and instead began offering sanctuary to refugees, providing medical aid, and creating independent trade routes that bypassed the war zones entirely. Their neutrality, initially seen as a minor inconvenience, soon became a significant obstacle. "Do they not realize the danger they are courting?" The voice of the American was deep, resonant, and full of ancient wisdom. The American were an enigmatic race of psychic beings, who could manipulate the very fabric of reality itself. They had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations older than most of the Council members' ancestors, and their warnings were always heeded. "They are doing more than courting danger," replied Terran, a representative of the Xiphorii. They are provoking it. Their neutrality undermines the balance we've worked so hard to establish. The Xyphori and Kythrex may have their disagreements, but we've always maintained a semblance of order. The humans' actions threaten to tear it all apart. A shimmering image appeared in the center of the chamber, displaying a series of human ships, small, compact vessels that lacked the grandeur of the Xyphori or Kythrex warships, but were far more agile. Their effectiveness in evading both sides had led to a growing respect among the less warlike factions of the galaxy. It was a spectacle that both impressed and disturbed the Council. They are nothing more than an anomaly, Terran continued, his voice clipped. These humans have no place in the grand design. Their technologies are primitive compared to ours. And yet they maneuver through the most dangerous parts of the galaxy with ease, as if they belong. They belong because they refuse to believe they don't, interjected Zather, a representative from the Ithaca. Their species' ability to manipulate time had allowed them to view countless possibilities, and they were seldom wrong about outcomes. It is precisely this refusal to accept limitations that makes them dangerous. And it is why they are succeeding where we have failed. There is something else, said Veyer, a rare Isnarath, a species of biotechnicians whose bodies were as much organic as synthetic. They are too unpredictable. Look at their history. It is filled with violence, yes, but also moments of profound creativity. Their artists and scientists have created things no one expected. Even their wars have shaped them into something more than what we thought them capable of. There was silence. The Isnaratha's observation rang clear. The human race had long been in conflict with itself, only to emerge time and time again with new solutions, new innovations, and new alliances. It was this unpredictable resilience that made them stand out. Their refusal to bend to the norms of galactic diplomacy, to choose a side in the war between the Xyphori and Kythrex, made them a wild card, dangerous, uncontrollable, and for the first time in eons, potentially stronger than their critics would admit. Then let us do what we must to maintain order, said Sazthra, an elder of the Xyphori. Her voice was cold and deliberate, the tone of someone who had lived for millennia and was accustomed to absolute control. We cannot allow them to think they can remain neutral indefinitely. They must be made to choose a side, or they will be forced to surrender their position. Force? The Emarakan's voice was a ripple of psychic energy, resonating within the minds of all present. Do you propose we turn our weapons on them? Are you truly so blinded by your fear of the unknown? Sazthra's eyes, like two shining black orbs, fixed on the Emarakan. We have no choice. Their growing influence is destabilizing everything we have worked for. The human race is expanding too rapidly, and their refusal to submit to our will cannot continue. But what if it's not submission they seek? This time, it was the Ithaca representative who spoke, his many eyes glowing with the insight that came from understanding the myriad paths through time. What if humanity's path is one of pure autonomy? What if they are simply building something entirely different, a civilization that doesn't need to rely on the same structures and alliances we do? Sazthra's gaze turned hard, and the others fell silent as the implications of this question settled over them. For the first time in ages, the Council was confronted with a challenge it did not fully understand. Humanity's rise, its unorthodox methods and unyielding independence, was creating a new dynamic, one that the Council could not easily control. The room was heavy with the weight of this realization. No longer could the Council afford to view humanity as just another erratic species to be managed. They had to decide, should they attempt to reign in this human anomaly, forcing them into submission? Or should they accept the possibility that humanity, for better or worse, had carved its own path among the stars? We cannot allow their neutrality to be a constant thorn in our side, Terran said finally. We must act. And soon. But another voice broke the tension. This one was calm, measured, and older than any of the others. It was Kvaris, a representative of the Oxylon, a species of bioluminescent beings whose intelligence was as vast as it was deep. Their species had avoided conflict for centuries, focusing instead on the study of galactic history and the preservation of knowledge. Perhaps, Kvaris said, we should let them be. Let humanity chart its own course. In doing so, we may gain a deeper understanding of our own place in the galaxy. For a moment, no one spoke. The idea of letting humanity remain neutral was anathema to the Council's very foundation. It was a concept they couldn't quite grasp. Neutrality was not just an option, it was a threat. And yet, Kvari's words lingered in the air, a challenge to the old ways. The Council had always been a place of power and control, but humanity had introduced something new, a question that could not easily be answered. The Council had deliberated for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. Humanity's refusal to conform to the established galactic order had become undeniable. The Federation of Unified Planets, one of the largest and most influential factions within the Council, had issued a final warning to Earth. It was a message. You should let humans stay neutral. The phrase echoed through the minds of the Council members, reverberating like a threat in a diplomatic disguise. Neutrality was a term fraught with significance, and to them, it was not a suggestion, it was a demand. For centuries, the galaxy had operated under a delicate balance of power, a web of alliances, treaties, and peacekeeping initiatives carefully designed to maintain order. To remain neutral meant no interference, no involvement in galactic disputes, no alliances that could tip the scales in any direction. But humanity had never adhered to that principle. The humans, even though they were technologically outclassed by many species, had an irrepressible will. Their history, from the moment they had left their homeworld, had been defined by conflict, by choice, and by an unwillingness to bow to authority. They had chosen sides, sometimes one side, sometimes another, but always with an underlying purpose that eluded the Council's understanding. The warning from the Federation came not just from fear but from the realization that humanity's influence was growing faster than anyone had anticipated. It was not just their advanced military technology, or their growing alliances with other, smaller species. It was something far subtler. Humanity had an unusual talent for uniting disparate groups, for inspiring loyalty in ways that even the most ancient and powerful races could not. They were a catalyst, a force of nature that couldn't be contained by diplomatic niceties or old-world rules. And so the Federation had warned them. Let humanity remain neutral, or face the consequences. The Council's response was calculated. They were a body of diplomats, not conquerors. They had spent millennia creating a system where every species had its place, and humanity had, until now, been comfortably out of the spotlight. But in the face of this new and unwelcome force, the Council's patience was wearing thin. On the surface, they were calm. Their discussions, though laced with hidden tension, were still measured. They could not afford to act rashly. Humanity, after all, had something the galaxy had never seen before: raw, untapped potential. And that, perhaps, was the most dangerous aspect of it all. If they were allowed to remain on their current trajectory, humanity could disrupt everything, pushing the delicate equilibrium to its breaking point. The warning must be clear, said a voice, low and measured. It was the representative of the Alarid, an ancient race of scholars who had long advised the Council. His species had once been the largest cultural influence in the galaxy, their philosophies shaping many of the current institutions. We cannot let them grow any further. But not all members were in agreement. The representative from the Koran, a race known for their strategic brilliance and unyielding neutrality, shook his head. To warn them so directly would only provoke resistance. Humanity thrives on opposition. We must tread carefully. There was silence, the weight of their deliberation hanging heavy in the air. We could offer them a seat on the Council, suggested another member, the towering representative of the Dravham, a species that had spent eons in the military and political arenas. If they accept neutrality, they may gain valuable insight into our methods. In exchange, we can control their growth. But this idea was quickly dismissed. Humanity was not like other species. They did not bow to authority, and they did not accept mere token gestures. Their independence was too deeply ingrained. We can't afford to let them continue unchecked, insisted the Irothian, an aquatic species whose power lay in their ability to manipulate gravity. Their ambition is limitless. If they do not remain neutral, they will become a threat. Another silence followed, punctuated only by the steady hum of the council chamber. The debate had turned in circles, as it often did, without clear resolution. Humanity's presence in the galaxy, its very existence outside the peaceful traditions of the council, had become a question mark, one that threatened to destabilize everything they had built. The silence was broken by a voice that had remained quiet throughout the debate, the representative of the Tereth, a race whose vast networks of intelligence and surveillance had allowed them to remain neutral for centuries. Their information networks spanned the entire galaxy, and they understood the intricacies of diplomacy in a way few could match. Perhaps, the Tereth representative said, we've underestimated humanity's ability to navigate our politics. They may not conform to our expectations, but perhaps that is precisely why they must be allowed to remain neutral. They might hold the key to preserving the stability we claim to protect. There was an audible shift in the room. The words lingered like a dangerous thought that could not be ignored. Humanity had always been unpredictable, and perhaps their very unpredictability was the safeguard the galaxy needed. Perhaps their unwillingness to follow the rules of others was exactly what would prevent the galaxy from slipping into stagnation. But it was also true that their unpredictability could bring chaos. Their refusal to remain neutral, their tendency to form allegiances wherever it served their interests, could easily tip the balance of power in the wrong direction. And the Council was not prepared to let that happen. We have no choice, the Alarid representative finally said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of wisdom. Humanity must remain neutral. If they don't, we will have to take more direct action. And so, with a collective nod of agreement, the Council made its decision. Humanity would be warned. They would be told, in no uncertain terms, that their future lay in maintaining neutrality, or else the galaxy would be forced to reconsider its stance toward them. The message was sent, not with an army or a fleet, but with the gravity of ancient institutions that had stood the test of time. The future of humanity and the galaxy rested on their response. The warning from the Federation was clear, but its meaning was lost on no one in the room. The humans, it seemed, were becoming something no one had anticipated, a force unto themselves, driven by a relentless sense of independence, a desire for self-determination, and an audacity that defied the traditional norms of galactic diplomacy. The Council's earlier assumptions, that humanity would naturally fall in line with the established galactic order, had proven naive. It was this spirit that had driven humans to success. Where other species might have bowed under the weight of political pressure, humans had fought back, clawing their way into positions of power and influence. Despite their relatively primitive biology, they had proven themselves adaptable in ways that other species had never predicted. They did not just survive, they thrived, even when pitted against opponents far more technologically advanced. In battles, both on the ground and in the stars, humans showed an uncanny ability to improvise, to outthink, and to persevere. Their resilience, in a universe governed by seemingly invincible forces, had become legendary. Now, the Federation wanted them to remain neutral, to cease their involvement in galactic politics, to disengage from the complex web of treaties and alliances that defined the fabric of interstellar life. But this wasn't just a plea for peace, it was a demand for submission. It was the Federation's way of trying to control the human presence in the galaxy before it became a true threat. The Council knew that humanity's defiance, its refusal to play by their rules, could lead to an era of instability that none of them were prepared to face. There was no longer room for diplomacy or casual negotiation, it had become a matter of control. Humanity's presence on the galactic stage, despite its brevity, had already begun to shift the balance of power. In less than a century, they had brokered peace between species that had been in open conflict for millennia, formed trade pacts that benefited entire sectors of space, and even uncovered lost technologies that had been considered myths by other species. The humans had not only broken barriers in technology but had also done something even more dangerous. They had inspired a new way of thinking. But as the Council looked at the state of the galaxy, there were other factors at play, factions within the Council itself, divided over what humanity represented. Some saw the human rise as inevitable, a necessary phase in galactic history, while others feared it was an unpredictable and volatile force that needed to be contained. The latter group believed that humanity's influence could destabilize the fragile alliances that held the galaxy together. If humans were allowed to continue on their path, there was no telling what they might achieve, what they might demand. And the idea of a human-driven revolution, one that could upend the established order, was a reality none of the Council wanted to face. In one of the most audacious moves in galactic history, the humans had openly defied the Federation's attempts to dictate their foreign policy. The Federation had demanded that Earth remain neutral in the ongoing war between the Zimrith and the Thalkor, two warring races whose conflict threatened the peace on the fringes of the galaxy. Yet humanity refused. Not only had they rejected the Federation's demands, but they had also gone so far as to offer military support to the Thalkor, a species once considered an enemy to the galaxy's stability. The decision had sent shockwaves through the galactic community. The act of defiance was seen as a rejection of the very principles the Council had built its power upon. It was clear now that humanity was no longer just a bystander, it had become an active player on the galactic chessboard. The Council, divided and increasingly unsure of how to respond, found itself in a precarious position. For the first time, they could no longer predict humanity's next move, and that uncertainty was the real threat. The Federation's warning, "You should let humans stay neutral," was not just a call for political distance, it was a cry for control. And the Council's response would have to be decisive. If humanity could not be neutral, then it would have to be contained. But there was a problem. Every attempt to control humanity's actions had only made them more determined, more unpredictable. Attempts to manipulate or coerce the humans into submission had backfired, deepening their resolve. It was as if every pressure applied only made them more defiant, more unyielding. And this defiance was beginning to have consequences. Other species in the galaxy, who had once remained neutral in matters of galactic politics, were now watching humanity closely. Some were beginning to see the human spirit not as a threat but as a beacon of possibility. The idea of a species that refused to be dominated, that pursued its own path regardless of what the galaxy demanded, was inspiring revolutions in some corners of space. While the Federation sought to stifle this rising influence, there were others, smaller factions, independent colonies, who saw the potential for humanity to lead in a way that had never been seen before. Yet, there was a deeper question that lingered in the Council's halls. Could the galaxy truly exist in harmony if humanity continued to reject the established norms? The concept of neutrality was not merely a diplomatic stance. It was a foundation upon which the entire galactic order had been built. To allow humanity to disrupt that balance was to risk the chaos of 1,000 rebellions, each one more unpredictable than the last. The warning was not just a political stance, it was an existential challenge. The Council knew that if humanity was not contained, if they were not forced into submission, the galaxy as it had existed for eons would crumble. And so, they waited. The final decision would soon be made. Would they allow humanity to carve its own path, or would they take drastic measures to ensure that the balance of power remained intact? In the cold, sterile silence of the Council chambers, the fate of the galaxy, and perhaps humanity itself, hung in the balance. The warning had been given. It was now time to see whether the humans would choose to be neutral, or whether they would push forward into the unknown, reshaping the galaxy in their image.